The Accra to Nsawam Road is more than a stretch of tarmac. It is a lifeline, a corridor that has shaped Ghana's history, trade, politics, and development for generations. Situated as the gateway between the southern coast and the central and northern regions, this road has stood at the center of Ghana's economic, social, and political journey. Before the current heavy traffic congestion, dualization projects, and modern expressway ambitions, this road had a long story, one that begins during the Colonial era, when Ghana was still known as the Gold Coast. To truly understand the urgency and importance of upgrading this corridor today, we must trace its historical background. From the dirt tracks of the colonial era to its role in post-independence nation-building, the Accra-Nsawam Road has always been an essential artery in Ghana's body of transport infrastructure. When the British formally established control over the Gold Coast in the late 19th century, one of their greatest priorities was transportation. The colony had vast mineral wealth, fertile agricultural land, and a coastline that connected Europe to Africa through bustling harbours. But to harness these riches, roads were needed. The earliest roads in the colony were little more than tracks, paths cleared through bush and forest, often based on indigenous trading routes that predated European arrival. Traders, farmers, and local kingdoms had for centuries established linkages between the coast and the hinterland. Cocoa, cola nuts, gold, and salt moved along these paths, carried by head porters and later by carts pulled by animals. The Accra-Nsawam route was one such critical path. Nsawam, located in the eastern region, was a strategic town. It lay on the way toward Kumasi, the Ashanti capital, and further into the Northern Territories. For the British, securing a reliable route from Accra to Nsawam was not just about transportation. It was about control, administration, and the movement of goods to the coast. By the early 20th century, the colonial government began investing in motorable roads designed to complement the newly built railways. The Accra-Nsawam Road became one of the earliest priority links because it fed into both trade and governance. Cocoa-growing areas in the eastern region, which would soon explode into the backbone of Ghana's export economy, required a road network to bring beans to the port of Accra. By the 1920s, cocoa had overtaken other exports to become the dominant crop of the Gold Coast. Farmers in towns like Suhum, Nsawam, and further north in the eastern and Ashanti regions planted cocoa trees at an unprecedented scale. The wealth generated from cocoa transformed the colony's economy, but it also demanded reliable transport systems. The Accra-Nsawam Road thus became a cocoa highway. Lorries began to replace head porters, moving sacks of cocoa beans from farms to buying centres and then onward to the ports. Nsawam grew into a vibrant market town, serving as a middle point between rural farms and the capital. As cocoa exports increased, pressure mounted on the road. Colonial engineers began to upgrade the path into a gravel road capable of handling more frequent traffic. This was not yet a paved road, but it was a significant improvement from the dirt tracks of the past. The growth of cocoa also meant that traders, buyers, and middlemen constantly moved along this corridor. Inns, trading posts, and small settlements sprang up along the way, turning the road into a commercial artery as well as a transport route. When Ghana gained independence in 1957, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah recognized the importance of infrastructure in uniting the new nation. His vision was not just political freedom, but also economic transformation. Roads, railways, harbours, and airports were central to this dream. The Accra-Nsawam Road naturally fell within this vision. Linking the capital to the eastern region and beyond to Kumasi, it was critical for domestic trade, national integration, and industrialization. Under Nkrumah, efforts were made to expand and improve the road. Although his government's resources were stretched, funding new harbours at Tema, the Akosombo Dam, new schools and new industries, the trunk roads still received attention. By the 1960s, the Accra-Nsawam Road had been paved in sections, making travel smoother and more reliable. This upgrade encouraged more vehicle ownership and bus services, further increasing traffic. Long-distance buses connecting Accra to Kumasi and beyond often use this route, cementing its status as the backbone of Ghana's road transport system. The decades after independence saw massive urban growth in Accra. As the capital expanded westward and northward, towns like Ofankor, Amasaman, and Pokuase that were once semi-rural began to absorb waves of migrants. The Accra-Nsawam Road thus became not just an intercity highway, but also a commuter route for thousands of workers entering the city daily. By the 1980s and 1990s, the strain on the road was visible. Traffic jams became common. Accidents increased. The road surface deteriorated under the weight of more vehicles than it was originally designed to carry. Nsawam itself grew into a larger town, adding more pressure to the road as a commercial hub. This period also saw political turbulence in Ghana, with frequent changes in government. Each administration acknowledged the importance of the Accra-Nsawam corridor, but financial crises and debt constraints limited major investments. Nevertheless, patchwork repairs, resurfacing projects, and small-scale expansions were undertaken. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, engineers and policymakers began publicly calling for the dualization of the Accra-Nsawam Road. The logic was simple. Traffic volume had far exceeded the capacity of the single carriageway. A dual carriageway would improve safety, reduce accidents, and ease congestion. The road was also increasingly recognised as part of the National Route 6, N6, the critical spine linking Accra to Kumasi. Since Kumasi is Ghana's second city and the commercial hub of the Ashanti region, the efficiency of this road was seen as a national priority. Several feasibility studies were conducted, some supported by development partners, while others were commissioned by Ghana's Ministry of Roads and Highways. However, actual large-scale dualization faced challenges of funding, right-of-way acquisition, and political will. One of the most significant steps in addressing congestion on the corridor came with the development of the Pokuase Interchange, inaugurated in 2021. This four-tier interchange, the first of its kind in West Africa, was built at the intersection of the Nsawam Road and the George Walker Bush Highway. The interchange was designed to reduce bottlenecks at one of the busiest points on the corridor, where local traffic, commuters, and long-distance travellers all converged. By creating grade separation and multiple levels of flow, it drastically improved the efficiency of movement in and out of Accra. Although the interchange itself is not the whole Accra-Nsawam Road, it represents the type of modernisation needed along the entire stretch. It demonstrated how infrastructure could reshape traffic patterns and reduce delays, and it provided a glimpse of what a fully dualised, modernised corridor could look like. If history explains why the Accra-Nsawam Road is vital, politics explains why its modernisation has been so complicated. From independence to the present day, the road has been a symbol of promises, development agendas, and sometimes disappointment. In Ghana, roads are more than engineering projects. They are political capital. They win votes, they stir debates, and they become points of pride or frustration depending on how governments deliver. The Accra-Nsawam corridor, part of the greater Accra-Kumasi spine, has lived through decades of shifting political winds. Every government has acknowledged its importance. Every party has promised to improve it. But progress has been slow, uneven, and deeply entangled in Ghana's broader political economy. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, was a visionary of infrastructure. His philosophy was that roads and industry would unlock Ghana's economic independence. During his time, the Accra-Nsawam Road was incorporated into the National Trunk Road System, recognised as the southern gateway to Kumasi and the Ashanti region. Nkrumah's government began paving and expanding sections of the corridor. However, his priorities were spread widely. The construction of Tema Harbour, the Akosombo Dam, Tema Motorway, and ambitious industrial projects took up much of the national budget. The Accra-Nsawam Road received attention, but it did not become a fully dualised highway under his leadership. Still, the groundwork was laid. The road was upgraded from a colonial gravel track into a paved arterial route. After Nkrumah's overthrow in 1966, Ghana endured years of political instability under military governments. The National Liberation Council, NLC, followed by the regimes of Ashiampong and Akufo, struggled with collapsing cocoa prices, economic stagnation, and rising debt. Roads remained a national priority in speeches and policy papers, but actual implementation slowed. Maintenance was patchy. The Accra and Nsawam Road, like many others, suffered from neglect. Heavy trucks carrying cocoa and timber continued to use it, and commuter traffic into Accra grew steadily. But funding shortages and corruption limited expansion projects. By the late 1970s, the road's deterioration reflected the wider economic crisis Ghana was going through. Potholes, narrow lanes, and lack of proper signage created danger zones. Travellers spent hours longer than necessary navigating the corridor. When Jerry John Rawlings came to power in 1979 briefly, and then again in 1981, Ghana was at the brink of collapse. His administration eventually embraced structural adjustment programs, SAPs, with the IMF and World Bank in the 1980s. These programs emphasized fiscal discipline, reduced state spending, and privatization, but they also opened up avenues for donor-funded infrastructure. During the Rawlings years, Ghana witnessed significant rehabilitation of trunk roads. The Accra and Nsawam Road was identified for improvement, particularly because of its role in cocoa transport. However, the emphasis was often on patching and resurfacing rather than major dualization. Still, road maintenance became a more regular part of governance, as international lenders insisted on protecting Ghana's key trade corridors. The 1990s saw gradual urban growth around Pokuase, Ofankor, and Amasaman, which further stressed the road. Buses from Kumasi, Tamale, and other northern towns continued to pass through Nsawam into Accra, making the corridor a 24-hour traffic zone. President John Agyekum Kufuor entered office in 2001 with a strong focus on infrastructure. His administration's golden age of business required reliable transport corridors. The Accra and Nsawam Road became central to plans of boosting domestic trade and positioning Ghana as a regional hub. Under Kufuor, feasibility studies for dualization of the Accra and Nsawam Road were re-energized. International contractors were consulted, and development partners were engaged for financing options. Portions of the Accra-Kumasi Road further up were improved, including sections around Nkrumah. While full dualization from Accra to Nsawam did not materialize in his time, Kufuor's government laid the foundation for later projects. His focus on infrastructure also created political momentum. Ghanaians began to expect that such crucial highways should be modernized, not just patched. When the National Democratic Congress, NDC, returned to power under President John Evans Atta Mills, the Accra and Nsawam Road was again highlighted as a national priority. Mills, who emphasized social infrastructure, recognized the road's role in easing commuter suffering and facilitating trade. His government pushed for project designs and financing discussions, but his untimely death in 2012 meant that his administration's direct contributions were cut short. Still, Mills's tenure reinforced the message that modernization of the corridor was not optional, it was essential. President John Dramani Mahama, succeeding Mills, had one of the most ambitious infrastructure agendas in Ghana's history. He championed roads, hospitals, schools, and energy projects. During Mahama's tenure, the Accra and Nsawam Road featured prominently. His administration announced plans to dualize sections and engaged with contractors to begin preliminary works. Mahama also initiated the Nkrumah Interchange in Accra, symbolizing his focus on easing congestion in key urban centers. However, economic crises, particularly the energy sector debt, high inflation, and currency depreciation, constrained the government's ability to deliver on all its promises. While progress was made on certain interchanges and highways, the Accra and Nsawam corridor remained largely unchanged. This became a political weapon for his opponents, who criticized delays and perceived over-promising. When Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo came into power in 2017, his government placed strong emphasis on Year of Roads initiatives. The Accra Nsawam Road was among the priority projects. The Pokuase Interchange, completed and opened in 2021, was the landmark achievement of this era. Funded partly by the African Development Bank, the interchange addressed one of the biggest choke points on the corridor. It became a symbol of modern road engineering in Ghana and was celebrated nationally. The Akufo-Addo government also advanced the Ofankor Nsawam dualization project. Contracts were awarded, work began, and sections were under active construction. However, delays plagued the project due to compensation disputes, utility relocations, and funding constraints. Despite multiple projected completion dates, the project remained incomplete by the end of Akufo-Addo's second term. Sworn into office in January 2025, the current NDC administration led by John Dramani Mahama has placed the Accra Nsawam Road and the broader Accra-Kumasi corridor at the top of its agenda. In speeches and policy statements, the government has committed not only to completing the stalled dualization projects, but also to constructing a brand new 6-lane expressway from Accra to Kumasi. This would bypass congested towns, introduce world-class expressway standards, and slash travel times between Ghana's two biggest cities. Unlike past promises, this plan is framed as a completely new alignment rather than upgrading the existing N6. The government is working with Afreximbank and other financial partners to secure funding. The projected completion is set for 2029, making it one of the most ambitious road projects in Ghana's modern history. Why has the Accra Nsawam Road become so political? The answer lies in visibility. Roads affect everyone: commuters, farmers, traders, and businesses. Unlike other infrastructure, roads are seen and experienced daily. A smooth highway is a political advertisement. A pothole-ridden corridor is political ammunition. Parties in Ghana have learned that delivering roads can swing constituencies. The Nsawam Adoagiri, Akuapem South, and other constituencies along this corridor are hotly contested electoral zones. Voters there know the value of better transport, and they reward governments that prioritise it. This explains why every administration has promised to fix the road, and why failure to do so has often been used against incumbents during campaigns. The Accra Nsawam Road today is one of the most heavily discussed infrastructure projects in Ghana. It is a corridor under reconstruction, a highway in transition. While some progress has been made, particularly at major junctions like Pokuase, commuters and long-distance travellers still face daily gridlock, construction-related disruptions, and uncertainty about completion timelines. The current state of the road reflects both the ambition to modernise and the reality of complex challenges: right-of-way disputes, utility relocations, compensation battles, funding shortfalls, and political promises that often clash with practical delivery. The Ofankor Nsawam dualization project. One of the most visible projects along the corridor is the Ofankor Nsawam dualization, a key segment of the larger Accra-Kumasi modernization. This project was launched to transform the existing 2-lane stretch into a 33.4-kilometre dual carriageway with service lanes, interchanges, and pedestrian bridges. The project is intended to reduce congestion for commuters entering and leaving Accra, create safer crossings for pedestrians in growing communities like Pokuase, Amasaman, and Dobro, provide service lanes for local traffic while freeing the main carriageway for long-distance vehicles, introduce interchanges and roundabouts to improve traffic flow. This project, if completed, will mark the beginning of a world-class corridor that could redefine transport between Accra and Kumasi. When construction began, visible progress was made on clearing land, grading sections, and relocating some utilities. Bridges were planned at critical crossing points, and service lanes started to take shape. Commuters noticed improvements in some sections, although diversions often slowed traffic in the short term. By 2025, the project had missed multiple completion deadlines. Officials confirmed that as of May 2025, the works were only about 74% complete. The causes were numerous: compensation disputes with landowners whose properties fell within the right-of-way, court cases delaying demolition of structures, relocation of power lines, water pipelines, and telecom cables, a process requiring coordination between multiple agencies. Cash flow delays, even when funding had technically been secured. Even when international lenders and the government commit to financing, the actual flow of money to contractors has often been irregular. In August 2025, the government made fresh payments to the contractor in a bid to re-energize stalled work. This demonstrated both commitment and the reality of financing gaps. For the average commuter, the state of the road is not about engineering diagrams or funding schedules. It's about daily suffering. Thousands of workers traveling from Nsawam, Amasaman, and surrounding areas into Accra endure hours of traffic every morning and evening. Despite ongoing construction, congestion remains severe. Diversions funnel multiple lanes of traffic into narrow paths, creating bottlenecks. During rush hour, vehicles sometimes move only meters in several minutes. The mix of heavy trucks, buses, taxis, and private cars on partially completed stretches creates safety hazards. Poorly lit construction zones at night, unclear signage, and exposed construction equipment increase risks. Pedestrians crossing the highway often do so at their own peril. The delays are not just an inconvenience. Businesses lose money when employees arrive late, transport operators burn more fuel, and traders see goods, especially perishables, spoiled in traffic. Logistics costs rise across the board, reducing Ghana's competitiveness in trade. One of the biggest obstacles has been securing land for the project. In dense urban areas, buildings, shops, and homes have encroached on the designated road reserve. Acquiring this land requires negotiations, compensation payments, and often litigation. These processes can stretch for months or even years, delaying construction. The corridor is lined with electric power lines, water mains, and telecommunication infrastructure. Relocating them requires coordination between the Ministry of Roads and Highways, ECG, GWCL, and telecom companies. Misalignment in planning has meant that contractors sometimes halt work while waiting for utilities to be moved. Even when budgets are approved, the release of funds to contractors can lag behind. Inflation and exchange rate fluctuations also increase project costs over time, straining already tight budgets. Building a modern dual carriageway in a densely populated corridor is not simple. Contractors must balance speed with safety, ensuring that ongoing traffic continues to flow while construction proceeds. Night works, diversions, and phased construction all complicate timelines. Despite challenges, there are visible achievements. Pokuase Interchange. Opened in 2021, it has dramatically eased one of the worst bottlenecks on the route. Partial dualization. Some stretches now have expanded lanes and improved drainage systems. Pedestrian footbridges. Several are under construction to improve safety. Service lane development. Local traffic is gradually being shifted onto service lanes, freeing the main corridor. These successes show what is possible when political will, financing, and engineering align. The modernization of the Accra and Nsawam Road is not an isolated project. It is part of a national strategy to dualize the entire Accra-Kumasi corridor, including Apedwa-Ejisu bypasses, allowing long-distance vehicles to avoid congested towns. Konongo-Ejisu dualization, another critical section under planning. New expressway alignment, announced by the current NDC government to create a 6-lane controlled access highway by 2029. The Ofankor and Nsawam stretch is therefore the first piece in a larger puzzle, one that aims to deliver Ghana's first true national expressway. Ghanaian media has covered the delays extensively. Headlines often highlight missed deadlines, commuter frustration, and government assurances. While commuters express skepticism, many also acknowledge that at least visible work is ongoing, unlike in past decades when promises remained only on paper. Civil society groups and transport unions frequently call for faster action, stressing the economic costs of inaction. Opposition parties use the road as political ammunition, criticizing the government of the day whenever progress stalls. Every great road project is built not only on asphalt and concrete, but on the promise of change. The Accra Nsawam Road has carried Ghana's trade, commuters, and dreams for generations, yet it has also been a symbol of delay, congestion, and lost time. Now, with ongoing dualization works and the bold vision of a new expressway to Kumasi, the question arises, what exactly will be the benefits? A modern Accra Nsawam corridor will not just reduce traffic, it will reshape Ghana's transport system, boost economic productivity, improve safety, and reinforce the nation's role as a trade hub for West Africa. The corridor is one of Ghana's busiest trade routes. Every day, trucks transport cocoa, timber, manufactured goods, and imports from Tema and Accra into the hinterland and further north. Delays on this road translate directly into higher costs for businesses. A dualized and eventually express standard road will reduce travel time between Accra and Kumasi, lower fuel costs for transport operators, cut down wear and tear on vehicles, improve predictability of delivery schedules. For exporters, this means fresher agricultural products reaching ports, faster turnaround for logistics firms, and greater competitiveness for Ghana's businesses. Communities along the corridor, Nsawam, Amasaman, Dobro, Pokuase, will see more investment. New businesses like fuel stations, logistics depots, restaurants, and hotels emerge naturally around highways. This brings jobs and local economic growth. Government's vision of industrialization under initiatives like One District, One Factory depends on efficient transport. Factories in the eastern and Ashanti regions will benefit from cheaper, faster access to ports and urban markets once the corridor is modernized. Tens of thousands of commuters travel daily from Nsawam, Pokuase, and surrounding towns into Accra. A modernized corridor will drastically cut their travel times. What currently takes 2 to 3 hours in peak traffic could drop to under 1 hour. This means more productive hours for workers, less stress, and better work-life balance for families. Students will arrive at school on time. Traders will reach markets earlier. Public transport operators will make more trips daily, boosting incomes. The current single carriageway has been notorious for head-on collisions, pedestrian accidents, and traffic fatalities. A dualized road with barriers, pedestrian bridges, and service lanes will reduce the risk of accidents by separating opposing traffic, protect pedestrians through dedicated crossings, improve lighting and signage for night travel. The human cost of accidents, injuries, deaths, and loss of breadwinners will be significantly reduced. Health facilities, schools, and markets become easier to reach with improved roads. For rural communities, quick access to hospitals in Accra can make the difference between life and death in emergencies. Accra and Kumasi are Ghana's two largest cities, one political, the other commercial. The flow between them represents the lifeblood of the country's economy. A reliable, fast corridor will tighten integration between these two centres. Investors will see Ghana not as a divided coast and hinterland, but as a connected economy with seamless movement. Ghana's ports are competing with rivals in Togo, Côte d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. Shipping companies choose routes based not only on port efficiency, but also on inland connections. A modern highway from Accra to Kumasi strengthens Tema's position as the gateway to the Sahel, attracting more shipping lines and boosting customs revenue. Road construction itself generates thousands of direct and indirect jobs, from engineers to masons, truck drivers, suppliers, and food vendors near construction sites. After completion, the expanded economic activity along the corridor creates permanent employment opportunities. The Accra Nsawam Road is part of the larger Trans-West African highway system. Goods moving from Tema and Accra head north to Kumasi, then to Tamale, Bolgatanga, and onward to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These landlocked countries depend on Ghana for access to the sea. A congested or unreliable road discourages traders from using Ghana's ports, pushing them toward alternatives in Côte d'Ivoire or Togo. A modernized corridor secures Ghana's status as the preferred gateway, boosting customs revenue and regional influence. With the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, Secretariat based in Accra, Ghana has positioned itself as a leader in regional trade. But trade agreements mean little without infrastructure. A world-class corridor linking Accra to Kumasi and beyond makes the AfCFTA vision tangible, facilitating cross-border trade and integration. Traffic jams mean cars spend hours idling, releasing harmful emissions. A smoother flow reduces air pollution along the corridor. Communities living near the road benefit from cleaner air and less noise pollution. A wider, modern road creates opportunities for bus rapid transit (BRT) systems or high-capacity intercity coaches. These reduce the number of private vehicles on the road, lowering congestion and emissions. For a commuter who today spends 4 hours daily in traffic, a dualized and express standard corridor is transformative. It means time to have breakfast with family, attend evening classes, or rest instead of sitting in a traffic jam. For a farmer transporting tomatoes from Techiman to Accra, it means reduced spoilage and better profits. For a trader exporting goods through Tema, it means predictable shipping schedules and lower logistics costs. For a student travelling to university in Kumasi, it means safer, faster journeys that reassure families. The benefits are not abstract. They are lived in the everyday stories of Ghanaians. Beyond economics and safety, the project also carries symbolic weight. It represents Ghana's determination to modernise and rise above the cycle of underdevelopment. Just as the Akosombo Dam symbolised energy independence and Tema Motorway represented modern transport under Nkrumah, the Accra-Kumasi Expressway promises to symbolise 21st century Ghana, connected, ambitious and forward-looking. The story of the Accra Nsawam Road has always been one of history, politics, challenges and resilience. But as Ghana looks forward, the narrative is shifting from patchwork fixes and incomplete dualization to a bold new vision. The construction of a 6-lane expressway from Accra to Kumasi. The current government has declared its intention to make this project a national priority, with completion projected by 2029. This is not merely an upgrade of the old N6 road. It is a completely new alignment, a controlled access highway that will finally give Ghana its first true expressway standard corridor, transforming travel and trade forever. What is an expressway? To understand the scale of the ambition, we must define what an expressway is. Unlike ordinary highways, an expressway is designed for controlled access, entry and exit only at interchanges, multiple lanes, usually 6 or more, separated by a median. Grade separation, no direct pedestrian crossings, no roadside stalls. Safety infrastructure, barriers, lighting, footbridges, weighbridges. High speeds and reliability, designed for fast, efficient long-distance travel. For Ghana, this represents a leap in road design philosophy. Instead of widening old roads, the new alignment will be built to international standards, closer to what you might find in Europe, the US, or advanced parts of Asia. In July 2025, the NDC government confirmed that the Accra-Kumasi Expressway would be a completely new road, not just a dualization of the existing N6. The president assured Ghanaians that by 2029, a 6-lane expressway would be operational, linking the 2 most important cities in Ghana. The financing plan includes support from Afreximbank facilities to provide external funding, national budget allocations to cover phased works, private contractors under EPC engineering procurement and construction frameworks. Unlike past governments that leaned heavily on public-private partnerships, PPPs, this administration has signalled that PPPs will not be the primary approach due to IMF-related fiscal constraints. Instead, financing will be phased to match Ghana's debt management strategies. The project is expected to roll out in phases, with each completed section opening for use as others continue. This reduces the risk of having partially built but unusable stretches, a problem that has plagued many African road projects. 2025 to 2026. Finalization of designs, right-of-way acquisition, environmental and social impact assessments, and financial closure. 2026 to 2027. Groundbreaking, with priority given to the Accra-Nsawam stretch. 2027 to 2028. Major works on bridges, interchanges, and the main carriageway. 2028 to 2029. Completion of remaining stretches, installation of lighting, toll systems, and safety infrastructure. Late 2029. Official commissioning of the Accra-Kumasi Expressway. Currently, travel between Accra and Kumasi takes anywhere from 4 to 7 hours depending on traffic. The expressway aims to reduce this to under 3 hours consistently. This will revolutionize trade, tourism, and personal travel. The expressway will cement the Accra-Kumasi corridor as the backbone of Ghana's economy. Investors will see opportunities to develop industrial parks, logistics hubs, and housing along the route. With controlled access, barriers, and pedestrian bridges, the dangerous mix of heavy trucks, taxis, and pedestrians on one stretch will be eliminated. The expressway promises to be one of the safest roads in Ghana's history. Landlocked neighbors like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger rely on Ghana's ports. The expressway will give them a faster and safer route, making Ghana their preferred transit hub. This strengthens Ghana's regional influence and generates customs revenue. No project of this magnitude is without obstacles. The expressway faces land acquisition disputes. Entirely new alignment means negotiating with hundreds of landowners. Funding gaps. Sustained financing is needed to prevent abandoned stretches. Utility relocations. Large-scale pipelines and power lines may need to be shifted. Environmental impact. Clearing land for a new corridor will require balancing development with ecological protection. Political continuity. The project spans multiple electoral cycles. Bipartisan support is crucial to prevent stoppages if governments change. Just as the Akosombo Dam became a symbol of Ghana's energy independence and the Tema motorway a symbol of early modern transport, the Accra-Kumasi Expressway will become a 21st century national landmark. A worker living in Nsawam will reach Accra in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. A student travelling to Kumasi for university will make the trip in comfort and safety. A farmer will move produce faster to urban markets, reducing spoilage. A logistics company will plan deliveries with reliable schedules. In the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, Ghana's ability to provide efficient road transport strengthens its position as a continental hub. The expressway makes Ghana a model for how infrastructure drives integration. The expressway is not the end of the story. Once completed, it will encourage expansion of similar expressways to Tamale, Takoradi, and other major cities. Integration with rail networks, especially if the Accra-Kumasi railway project advances. Development of satellite cities along the corridor, easing pressure on Accra. By 2035, Ghana could see a new transport map defined by modern expressways and intermodal hubs, with the Accra-Kumasi Expressway as the flagship. If you believe Ghana deserves this future, help keep the conversation alive. Share this story, talk about the importance of the Accra-Nsawam corridor, and hold leaders accountable to their promises. Roads do not just belong to governments, they belong to the people. Support infrastructure development, support transparency in funding, support the dream of a modern Ghana connected by safe, efficient highways. Because the Accra-Nsawam Road is not just a road, it is Ghana's lifeline, past, present, and future.